Welcome into another episode of Behind the Wheel. Jason Stein with my co-host Flavio Volpe. Flavio, how are you,
Yeah,
my?
great. I'm great. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. We've got a real treat here today. We've had such a great list of guests to this point, but we're going to talk about all things future. And
Yeah.
and by future, what we mean is, of course, related to autonomous driving and Internet of Things and different architectures and software and hardware. But we're also going to talk about Montreal neighborhoods and the
Yeah.
future of those. An interesting interview.
Yeah, France is a great guy, president at LeddarTech, and he's been all over the world, and he's brought Montreal with him, but he's brought some of the world back to Montreal. And it is a very interesting perspective from a kid born in Haiti, who's growing up in one of the Olympic cities, one of the key cities in Canada, who has a they have a real secret in being a hub in software and AI, and I couldn't be a better guy to bring that story to us.
LeddarTech is a leader in level 2 to 5 autonomous driving sensor fusion technology, and that's more technology than I've said in the last year. Let's let Frantz Saintellemy explain the science behind the future of the car, president and COO of LeddarTech, today on Behind the Wheel. Well, what a pleasure to have you on the program, Frantz. Welcome in to Behind the Wheel.
So delighted to be with you, Jason, and Flavio.
Good to see you, France. We've got so much to talk about, but we're in this Jetsons age, this Knight Rider age, where we're talking about electric cars that drive themselves, and we've got one of the global leaders in this, from Quebec, and so happy to have you. And I just want to jump right in there. We're gonna see when are we gonna see autonomous drive cars all over the highway?
Well, it depends how patient you are,
Yeah,
or because my feeling is we're still decades away from having fully autonomous vehicles on the highway. However, we are very close from having pilots on the highway.
yeah,
What I mean by that is you may have, just like you have adaptive cruise control today, the next step is you're going to have a highway pilot that's going to take you from exit 100 to exit 170. So giving you the freedom of that whatever hour and a half that you gain. And the technology is ready. It just needs regulation to follow.
Is that that's the key, right? Because we've been talking about this for a long time, a really long time, and it always seems to be on a rolling forecast. Well, it'll be 5 years from now. Well, next year, it'll be 5 years from now. But is it the regulations that aren't keeping up with the technology, or was the technology faster than the regulations, or both?
Yeah, you could argue, Tesla is a perfect case scenario. Camera vision only systems where you're on a highway, you can set the pilot on. It'll work perfectly fine. On a good day, no issues. Uh, Problem is that if you don't have regulation, then Tesla has one approach, BMW has another approach, Toyota has another approach, and you know it's all bets are off because what Tesla may consider a highway pilot, um, you know, BMW may consider that as highway assist. And so regulation is really the key, but the technology is it's fine today. As long as it's within a framework that people can clearly understand what's its fit and purpose, what it is, and more important, what it's not. A pilot for on a highway is not a full autonomous driving. You cannot sleep. You have to be eyes on. You still need to be aware of what's going on surrounding the vehicle, but you don't have to have all your hands on the vehicle. And the camera system can do that quite well today.
so who's key on this? Is this, we see progression of technology that's available in vehicles over the years. You've got backup cameras are not required by law, and we have ADAS systems that are starting to be introduced by every single automaker to a certain degree. Who's the key player in the regs? This isn't coming from Ottawa.
Yeah, the key players in my mind are definitely regulators, because If you
But is
think
it?
about,
But is that? Are we waiting for? Are we working with Washington, or is it somewhere else?
my feeling is that this has to be European Union and the US. These are the leaders that set the tone across the globe. Japan has had autonomous driving regulations for quite some time now, but that hasn't permeated across the globe. The European Union 5 years ago came out with the general safety regulation. They pushed it out by a couple of years because OEMs were not ready. But this was enacted in July last year, where all new cars, regardless of class, have to be able to reliably detect vulnerable road users and avoid collisions altogether. So it forces the landscape. And guess what happens? And NHTSA in the US came out with their own regulations, which goes even one step further. It says, hey, you need to have automatic emergency braking, and it doesn't matter whether it's daylight or nighttime.
Hmm.
And so regulation drives innovation in this case, not the other way around. When innovation drives regulation, we are in trouble. That's the
Yeah,
Tesla case.
yeah,
Is,
yeah.
has the Tesla episodes over the course of the last, I don't know, half decade, have they hurt the case for proliferation?
Yes, yes, and no. Um, yes, in the sense where it 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 gave people or the general public doubts around the the validity of the technology and the technology readiness. But no, in the sense where Tesla, being so aggressive, pushed the entire industry to accelerate its development. 5 years ago, everybody was talking about 2025 as the year where we will see autonomous driving vehicles on the road. That's largely driven by Elon Musk and Tesla.
Yeah. You've had quite a career before you ended up as the president and CEO of LeddarTech. You did a lot of stuff from semiconductors, IoT sensors. Um, but you're in Montreal, and we talk about the Canadian automotive future, and we talk about we make cars in Ontario. Maybe we're in the battery space in Quebec, but you've been in that applied sciences, that applied technology space forever there. And
Yeah.
tell us about the scene there. Tell us why, what's it like? Where are we going? What's the role of Quebec in this future?
So I'm so proud to be Canadian. It's not even funny. It's costing my bank account and and my family a lot of money. But the fact is, I'm fortunate enough to have studied in some of the best schools in the world, and I've worked in the best tech environments in the world. And when I always am, shocked as how I see other ecosystems, and I'm saying, wait a minute, we can do way better. I mean, when you look at, across the globe in all of the best companies over the world, you have people from Toronto, people from Vancouver, people from Montreal. Always, always the case. You go to Silicon Valley, some of the best scientists, where they come from? Toronto, Montreal. And but we don't have the industries to sustain it. We don't have the financing ecosystem to sustain it. And that always pained me. It was painful to me to watch. And so for me, said, I have enough of credibility that I will use my own voice to actually create and accelerate the industry in my own backyard. I could have done it elsewhere, but I felt that it was needed to push the boundaries and to also leverage my international capital to bring in, let's say, the industry closer to home. So when you look at the evolution of the car industry, it's gone from, you know, engine, chassis to now to technology. And technology is about the brains. It's not about the infrastructure. Semiconductors can be built anywhere, but the IP that goes into semiconductors, why couldn't they be built out of Toronto, out of Ottawa, out of Montreal, or out of Quebec City, or out of Vancouver?
Yeah.
So if you fast forward in the future, the vehicle goes from, how fast is your engine to how efficient and the range of your battery to how software defined it is. So the hardware, the chassis, the engines, everything else becomes a vehicle to deliver more technology to the end user, more benefits to the end user, more safety to the end user. It's all driven by software. And we have some of the best software scientists in the world in Montreal. The largest cluster of artificial intelligence research scientists in the world sitting or are in Montreal. So why couldn't we have the Bosches, the VWs, the Audis, the Toyotas, the Hondas having their research centers in Montreal?
Yeah.
And Toronto, because those are the two largest clusters. And if you combine this, you would take, if you combine Montreal and Toronto software development capability, AI, neural net, deep machine learning capabilities, that's Silicon Valley and European Union combined.
Crazy.
We're talking about European Union or Germany, where you have 87 Max Planck institutes. You know, we have more here than anywhere else, but that doesn't come out because all we hear is the negative side of being in Canada. But we have such an advantage and we're so attractive. And for me, if we, you know, LeddarTech's success is just a direct correlation to the success of the research and the universities that we have.
Related, you have co-founded an incubator called Group 3737. You've invested $20 million with 200 entrepreneurs companies. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so again, it's part of my frustration. You know, I wasn't born in Canada, but, you know, the way I like to say it is I was conceived and delivered in Haiti, but Frantz Saintellemy was born in Montreal in Canada. So, but, you know, I was frustrated by, you know, the rhetoric that, you know, immigrants don't create companies, which is ludicrous. I mean, and I felt that this was not proper and something needed to change, and particularly non-European immigrants. I should be more precise. And so, you know, this country is evolving at a rapid pace with having some of the best people from different countries coming to choose Canada because they love what we have to offer. But then they come in, they get disillusioned because they don't have access to the network, they don't have access to financing. And so they then end up starting what I would call survival businesses, just enough to make it by, to pay their bills, and to offer that. They're not thinking about scaling. So think about this. A scientist from Syria who's done a lot of research, or a doctor or a dentist, they come here in Canada, they lose their license because but they're capable of starting great businesses because they have done this in the past. They have that entrepreneurial DNA, but they lack the ecosystem. And so, you know, in 2010, when I started looking at, is this something that could, if we built it, would they come? And so we started working on this project to really create an ecosystem that would cater to that subsector of entrepreneurs and give them the same network that you would get at a creative destruction lab, or that you would get at any other incubator accelerator. And it started with a small group of entrepreneurs. Now we are across 12 locations in Canada. We have a network of over 15,000 entrepreneurs with, you know, $1.8 billion of combined value generated since the 10 years we've been in business. So we have companies that are generating $500,000 in revenue, other companies that are generating tens of millions in revenue. It's all started from just giving them access to the tools and services that would help them scale.
You know what I like about it? Just one more thing on it. You know what I like about it is that it's based on one of the poorest neighborhoods in Canada, in Montreal. And just reading a little bit about it, housed in a mythical building that once hired immigrants for manufacturing work. But today, France represents the pride of accomplishment, economic independence, and the possibility of taking one's place in Canadian society and contributing to its wealth. Couldn't be better said.
It's amazing. I mean, my mother was actually one of the employees of that building.
Hmm.
It used to house, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the textile industry, but Dominion Textile was the main attraction in that business. And every morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, you'd have basically these managers, these bosses that would come out with their work pad. And based on their needs for the day, they would choose the different people that they would hire for the day, and then pay them minimum wage, and sometimes less if they're paid cash. And so I had the fortunate, uh, or maybe I had the chance to work there for a week with my mom, folding clothes for baby clothes. It's harder than it looks, but there was no ventilation. It was dark. Really, you couldn't even use proper restrooms. You had to ask for permission to go to the toilet just to get a bio break. And so this really stuck with me. And it was just by pure chance that that building became available, and we turned it into a project that had long-term, um, let's say, positive impact in the neighborhood. When we first started, you think about the stigma of a poor neighborhood, and I said, that's because you know too much. Because when I call my friends in the Silicon Valley or in Germany or in France, I tell them Saint Michel. They don't know. It's Montreal. It's a suburb of Montreal. So for them, it's as good as anything else, anywhere else. And so the stigma of a poor neighborhood was only local, because internationally they just didn't care. They just cared about, collaborating with entrepreneurs or companies that could solve problems for them. And so that was you know, the value that we brought with this project by working, in a neighborhood that could also help create local businesses. Because in the process, hotels have been built in the neighborhood, shops are being built, new condo developments have been built. So if we just take out the connectivity around it and add it on, this is multi-billion-dollar value for the neighborhood.
So, a kid from Haiti folding baby clothes with his mom on the day that your mom and you were fortunate enough to be called on by the boss is the chancellor of the University of Montreal now. And your work on this and other things got you named to the Order of Canada last year. And
Yeah,
and,
I mean,
and,
but
and
it only can happen, Flavio, in the best country in the world.
you're so
There's
humble. I got to
No,
tell
that's
you,
true. I mean,
uh,
think about it. How many Frantz Saintellemys don't get these opportunities?
yeah,
Millions.
yeah.
I'm fortunate to have been grown up in the right country at the right time that can, basically allow me to thrive as an individual. And we take this for granted. But I tell you, having lived in the US, lived in Germany, we take things here like social welfare. We take them for granted because it's your right.
Yeah,
Education, it's your birthright.
yeah.
Um, safety, it's a right to be safe. You know, in the US, um, it's a privilege to have higher education. It's a privilege to have, health care and family wealth. These are privileges. Here, it's basic. And so that basic right gave me a chance to go to school, learn a trade, to travel the world and become an expert in an area where I I have become a well known.
Well, I'm still going to say that you're humble, and we do live in a great country, but in part because of the contributions that people like you make. And Saint Michel's a tough neighborhood. Growing up, lots of friends in Montreal, we'd go and see them in Saint Michel and Saint Leonard, and it's always been the beachhead where immigrants would find their way into Montreal. And for a lot of them, including some European ones, you never leave. You're creating a ladder. But even more importantly, you're bringing people in there and helping to move a space that is near and dear, but also does need some light shed on it. So here's a question for you, a kid from Haiti and Saint Michel, who is a globally respected leader on autonomous drive. And you've been around the world. I spent a lot of time in places, biggest cities in China. Can you talk a little bit about how you see where they are on the curve on the use of these technologies for um, intelligent drive or ecosystem? You got a bit of a history in Internet of Things, and what we don't know in North America about their experience and their drive on it.
That's a great question. I mean, China is a bit of an unknown for most people, but in terms of industry, it's now the largest automotive country in the world. They produce more cars, they buy more cars, they drive more cars than any other country. So it's a massive player in the automotive industry. And what they've also done is taken, call it the high road, um, be super aggressive and be at the forefront of innovation when it comes to taking risk on the legislation side, but also building the highways in such that they could permit autonomous driving or city roads so that they can allow companies to test on ideas and projects. And then the government is a major buyer of these technologies and a major investors in companies that are what I would call progressive companies. Um, so they are definitely a force to reckon with. And then if you add that to their capacity to invest in areas such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, computer vision, this gives them a distinct advantage on, let's say, absorption of new technologies because the government in 1 minute can change the legislation to allow autonomous driving on highways and that they can deploy that across the country. We don't have that luxury here. And I think that plays in their ability to move fast. The other thing too is that what also people don't understand, we've actually given China a lot of access because of manufacturing, because we underinvested in batteries, because we underinvested in making camera image sensors and all these stuff. Um, we've given them a leg up. So I came back last night from the IAA Mobility in Munich. What was surprising is the China presence, but also the biggest booth at the show was not Mercedes, was not BMW, was not, Volkswagen. It was BYD. They were in the B Hall, where they had pretty much 3/4 of the hall for them and their suppliers. It was quite impressive. So they're very, very advanced in terms of their car productions now. And as you can see, BYD is leading the way, but they also have NIO, Geely, Li Auto, some really, really strong players that will be global players for many decades to come.
And when I lived in Munich, the biggest issue that those companies had was being able to meet Euro NCAP standards at the time. And, I remember one Frankfurt Motor Show where they showed basically a copy of a BMW X5, but the doors were kind of welded shut because they didn't want anybody to see what was inside. The rate of change has been phenomenal now, just 10 years later. So where does China sit relative to your world 5 to 10 years from now?
Well, I think what they're very good at is they're fast innovators, and they're also fast adopters of innovation. Because they have all these means through governments and also as a culture, um, they're they're comfortable with risk, work in progress. We're not. We are, it works or it doesn't work. It passes or it fails. So, it's one of those things where I do feel that 5 years from now, China there will be two or three of their car manufacturers that will be in the global top suppliers outside of China. There's no doubt in my mind. I think BYD has that chance. They're big, they're profitable, they've got everything from battery management to battery development to infrastructure for AI, uh, electronics. They even make their own chips. So there is no doubt in my mind. 5 years from now, we'll see. I already see them in on the roads. I see BYD cars. Take a taxi out of the Trudeau Airport now. You see a lot of BYD electric vehicles.
Yeah.
So they are the new Hyundai Kia Motors. So I do expect them to be
Exactly.
a strong player.
Yeah. Let's talk about just a couple of other subjects. Cybersecurity. What are your views on the risks associated with cybersecurity?
It's not a risk, it's a certainty. So what we lack is enough, let's say, infrastructure to manage this certainty. But it's clear cybersecurity is something that we have to learn, that there will be cyber incidents, and the rate at which they will happen will further increase. So for me, I'm an advocate of having one digital identity, one digital footprint, so that it's easier to trace human beings. You and I, we can't cross the border without a passport. Why could we not envision digital borders? There will be digital borders. There are already. I mean, TikTok is a perfect example. Google also is another example where they're not welcome in China. So there are digital frontiers. And I do feel that this is something that's going to be needed in order to manage that risk better than we are managing it today. Cybersecurity, the cars, as they include more technology, will be more prone to cyber attacks, and we just need to deal with it.
Cybersecurity in cars wasn't an issue when you were growing up. What was your first? what was your first car?
So I had a Toyota Supra. I was so proud of that car. Oh my God.
What year was it? What year?
It was a 96.
Yeah. Oh, Fast and the Furious Supra.
Yep,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah. That's a big deal. Turbo?
And I had bought, it was that time where you buy your radio with the removable face head.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I had a Pioneer radio, and I also jacked it up with extra bass in the back.
Yeah.
An extra subwoofer, and also retrofitted it with the digital processor, so that I could get higher amplifier.
What color was it?
It was lunar or charcoal gray.
Oh,
and
that's
then
a
the headlights would come up, say hello.
Yeah. Really nice.
Yeah.
Wonderful. My father had that car. That's great. That's really great.
Yeah, but funny story. So that car, I paid it $500.
Yeah.
So
how long did it last you?
It lasted long enough, 3 years.
Yeah.
But the oil pan was leaking.
Yeah.
So I didn't have enough money. So what I did was I was creative. We jacked up the car, we welded back together, went into the scrap yard, got a new, got some, the fuel line also was rusted. So for every dollar of fuel that I would put, I would lose 50 cents. So I had to figure out a way to weld it back. So that was the beauty of these cars. You could actually buy a very cheap car.
Yeah.
If the engine worked, you could repair everything else if you were handy. And today it's not possible anymore.
Gosh, that's so true. What a great a great comparison to where we are today. And by the way, who would really want that as an autonomous vehicle, right? You want to drive it.
Yeah. You want to experience
stick shift.
Look at you. That's the best anti-theft device right
Yes,
there. Yeah,
absolutely.
that's it.
You know, my biggest memory, or one of my fun memories. I used to drive on Saturday nights
Yeah.
on Saint Laurent. Now, for those listeners who don't know Boulevard Saint Laurent in Montreal, in the 90s, mid 90s to early 2000, it was the club scene.
Oh yeah.
So now you remember I souped up my sound system, my
Yeah.
Pioneer
Yeah.
radio. I would blast it up, and then I would be on stick shift back and forth on the hill.
Love it. Love
I
it.
love
Oh
it.
God.
So good. We really appreciate you sharing your view on all things in your world and outside of your world, or that will affect your world. You've been a wonderful guest, Frantz.
Thank you for having me. I had a blast. We could go on for another hour.
Oh, I want to come to
Two.
Montreal and hang out with you with that. I'll bring a Supra out there.
Yeah,
We'll have a great time. We'll have a great
for
time.
sure.
Thanks for coming on, friends. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Yeah.
Thank you, Frantz. Okay. We're
Look
all
at
good.
Look at you. I didn't want to take you for a souped up Supra guy.
Yeah.
We all
Yeah.
got those stories, man. I had a Corvette.
I had
and
the Prelude as well
What year?
afterwards.
Yeah,
Oh,
the Hunt.
The Prelude was a 2000.
Oh, that's when they went back to the retro design.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, I like that
was
one.
a nice time.
Yeah, I like that
And that
one.
one actually lasted me 5 years because I
Yeah.
bought it, in better condition. But
Yeah.
the Toyota, they made incredible sports cars, cheap
Yeah.
sports cars.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
did.
yeah,
Well, even the Celica, just the precursor to the Supra, was fantastic.
yeah.
And I have to remind you also, I had a 5.0 Sirocco.
What?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
You
Another good car.
what year was the Scirocco?
Scirocco was 2005.
Oh, you had one of the last ones.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, I bought it in 2005, but it was a much earlier than that. Maybe 97 or
But still,
99.
it's the last one. It's longer, a little bit bigger face. Those are
Exactly.
fun. Those are
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Oh my
We
God.
had here all the Italian guys were in Mustangs, or a Camaro or older Corvette. But everybody else, and we had really big Portuguese community here. They were in the Volkswagens, they were in the Scirocco's, then they went to the Corrados,
Hmm.
and
Oh,
it was they were in so many Corrado VR6s that we called it the Portuguese Lamborghini. But that was the scene, man. And you tune your own
that
cars.
was.
And
Yeah.
you'd have a beater, and I'd have a beater. Every winter I'd buy a beater, and the objective on the beater was $1,000, taxes included and license included. And we called them NIVs, no investment vehicles. You buy it, you
Nice.
drive it, maybe you change the oil, see how far it goes. They'd last 1 or 2 years.
Yep.
But we're doing all kinds of silly stuff like you were there.
Yeah. No,
exactly.
and that's the one thing I have to say with the automobiles now. They're not as fun driving as they
Mhm.
once were.
Mhm.
If
Yeah,
you
that's
you
true.
enjoyed
That's
the
true.
drive, now of course there's some things now with these electronic valve timings. These
Yeah.
you can do things that are really super scary, but
Yeah.
not fun.
I'll leave you
You
with
know?
this. I had a Dodge Demon for 4 years. I sold it to somebody I used to work for. It was everybody gives me that same face. It was a absolute rocket ship, and I had no fun with it because it was way past your 195 horsepower Prelude where you could have fun with it. I couldn't have fun with it. I put 10,000 kilometers on it in 4 years, and the most fun was maybe 10 or 20 on ramps because it was insane. And we're at a point where everything, 600-700 horsepower, you can get anywhere you want. It's not as fun. I
No.
love them, but it's
You
not
gotta
as
be
fun.
careful. That's the issue.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
This was great.
Thank
to
you.
see you,
Thank
Frantz.
you for the time. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Take care.
Ciao. Have a good
Until we
weekend.
talk.
Thank
Ciao.
you.